Welcome back to Hardball. Last week, former Republican Party chairman and Bush campaign manager Ken Mehlman announced publicly that he is gay. He also said he plans to help build support for gay marriage. He joined the prominent conservative attorney Ted Olson, who was the U.S. Solicitor General under George Bush, in supporting the cause. They're not the only ones. Here's what Steve Schmidt, who steered John McCain's campaign in 2008, told the Huffington Post, quote, "There's a strong conservative case to be made in favor of gay marriage. Marriage is an institution that strengthens and stabilizes society. It is an institution that has the capacity to bring profound joy and happiness to people, and it is a matter of equality and keeping faith with one of the charters of the nation, the right to live your life." Will more conservatives join what Schmidt calls a conservative case for gay marriage? We're joined right now by Clarke Cooper, the executive director of the Log Cabin Republicans, and Joe Solmonese, the president of the Human Rights Campaign. Well, Joe, are you thrilled to have these unlikely supporters? The Republicans are joining the ranks, calling for, I'm going to ask you in a minute whether you still think there may be a problem with going for same-sex marriage under the Constitution, or whether they're going state by state. But the first question is, are you happy to have your new allies here?
Absolutely. I mean, every day we see more and more people moving in the direction of supporting marriage equality. As Ken Mehlman said, the past is the past. His offer was to help move us forward, to do what he could. And I think that, we certainly don't have the luxury at this point in our movement to turn away any offer of help. And so whether it's Ken Mehlman or Meghan McCain, you mentioned the elites within the Republican Party. I think they're well-respected figures within the Republican Party whose opinions matter greatly to Republicans.
You don't like the word elite?
Not that I don't like the word elite. I just think that,
Ben Ginsburg, Ted Olson, Ken Mehlman, Steve Schmidt, they're the top dogs. Come on, I'm sorry, they're right at the top.
I guess you can be elite and well-respected.
I am doing it somewhat disparagingly because I've yet to see grassroots, right-wing, Saudi-buster support for same-sex marriage, Clarke. So if you're going to make the case for that, go ahead. Are the regular grassroots Republicans with you, or is this just the elite Republicans?
No, it is grassroots Republicans, because we're talking about everyday people. Your average log cabin Republican donor is like your average RNC donor. I don't know if you know this, but $20 to $25 is the average donation of a log cabiner. That's a police officer in Schenectady, New York, or a school teacher in Lawrence, Kansas. So, yeah. Grassroots is on board. We've been on board. This is not new news.
So you're saying all kinds of people can be gay? I'm just teasing. I'm playing Steve Colbert here for a minute. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you about the key question. First, Joe, you've been following this, and then, let me start with Clarke, because this is a sort of Republican question. Scalia. I've always watched Scalia. After the Lawrence case on sodomy back a couple of years ago, he said, well, this opens the door to perhaps a view under the Liberty Clause, under the Due Process Clause, of perhaps opening it up to gay marriage under the Constitution as a right. So he saw it coming. Whether he likes what he saw coming or not is my question. Could Scalia be the surprising vote in the Supreme Court for this case against Prop 2 in California, which would make it a right under our Constitution to have a same-sex marriage?
I'm not going to speak on behalf of Justice Scalia, but I will say that if Perry versus Schwarzenegger does go up to a higher level, if it's escalated up to a Supreme Court case, then that will be part of the argument that was made at a lower federal court. That is against the Constitution. We're talking about inalienable rights here. It is not just a part of the preamble, but it is also a conservative tenet. Individual liberty, individual responsibility. The case certainly can be made, and it will be made. Mr. Olson's already made it once. He'll continue to make it if there's an appeals process.
That's unless the crazies in your party get rid of the 14th Amendment. Then you'll have problems, right?
I don't think there's any official move. Actually, there's not an official move to withdraw any amendments from the Constitution at this time.
You're getting so formal with me.
Chris.
You know what I'm talking about. Joe, let me go to a liberal here. Joe, it seems to me the situation is the right wing would like to give people, well, life, liberty, and property protected under the 14th Amendment, except for due process being denied by due process. At the same time, some of the crazier elements in the Republican Party are talking about getting rid of the whole amendment because they don't like birth citizenship or whatever you call it. Your thoughts on that? The weirdness going on here.
Well, I mean, I think you're pointing out what maybe had historically been a two-way split within the Republican Party now feels like a bit of a three-way split. You've got moderate Republicans and the voices coming forward speaking out for marriage. You've got the Tea Party, which at least outwardly has gone to great lengths to avoid a discussion of social issues. And then you've got, the far right, who have for a long time now been really the only voice out there against marriage equality, offering up all sorts of reasons why it's a bad idea. And I think what is refreshing and helpful is a new chorus of voices coming forward countering that. And then you add to that the case in California, where for the first time they actually had to bring evidence forward to suggest that marriage equality was a bad idea. And as we saw, they had nothing to offer. So, you talked about the grassroots. It is true that among Republican voters generally we're lagging. I mean, about 20 points or 30 points behind Democrats, 20 behind independents. But again, I think as people like, Ken Mehlman and others come forward, you're going to see those numbers start to move because there's been no counter to the nutty right.
Well, here's Steve Schmidt, who ran the McCain campaign last time, quote, more and more conservatives are saying that opposition to gay marriage would not be a litmus test for membership in the GOP, and more conservatives are making the case they no more would want big government conservatives in the bedroom than they want big government liberals telling them how to live. I guess this brings us to the question now, and I do believe, in behalf of your cause, Clarke, which I support, I think the more that people come out and express themselves in terms of their orientation, the more that families become openly aware of it and become somewhat protective and basically become allies in this cause. And as it spreads and spreads and spreads, Republicans as well as Democratic and independent families join the cause for equality here. But is the Republican platform going to change by 2012, sir?
Well, we're working on it. And we're not just only working on it from within the party, but we're talking about grassroots. Many of our chapter leaders and log cabin Republicans across the nation are delegates to the convention. Some of them are actually what is RNC Eagles, or the high donor level within the party. So the dialogue is already there. It's at a level that it hasn't ever been, frankly. My dialogue with the RNC and the campaign committees, the NRCC and the NRSC, is ongoing. Not every member of the Republican Party, not every Republican office holder is on the same page. But that's the whole point of why we're having dialogue. If I can get a member of Congress to at least agree to certain aspects like employment non-discrimination, that begins the dialogue. Or if they agree to, say, repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that's another foothold into the dialogue. Some members of Congress, they just want to start out by addressing tax equity in the next Congress. We'll take that. But the ball is moving forward. The party is getting back to basics.
Well, let me tell you where it's not moving forward, Joe. I was watching the Glenn Beck rally the other day, and I got to tell you, the Christian right, under Palin, under the banner of Palin and Beck, they're trying to take that party from its secular roots, almost like a matchup with the Middle East politics, and they're trying to turn it into a Christian right party with some Jewish conservatives, but mainly a Christian right party. They're trying to turn it into that based upon God and Jesus and all this in an incredibly un-American way, turning a political party into a religious institution. I don't think it's going to help marriage equality. My thoughts now, what are yours?
Well, Glenn Beck, for starters, actually is fine with marriage equality. So we're not going to get in here and talk about semantics about some libertarian movements or some other voices within the Republican Party. We can. But if we're talking about marriage equality, you happen to raise Mr. Beck's name. Okay. He actually is in support of it.
Okay, well, I guess I don't hear that sound coming from the rally types. But your thoughts, Joe, how do you read it?
Look, I completely agree with you with, as you laid out the situation with Palin and Beck. But it is interesting to note that maybe tactically, even Glenn Beck realizes that to have an intolerant view about marriage equality, it just doesn't square with growing the ranks of the Republican Party. And so whether that is his individual view or whether it's sort of a tactical acknowledgement that you're not going to grow the ranks of the base unless you start to ease off on some of this stuff, I think is an interesting thing to see that whether he feels that way or not, he said marriage equality doesn't bother me.
It may not go too well with his new love power gambit. Anyway, thank you. I know all of a sudden after kicking the Democrats below the belts for months and months and months, they decide to celebrate their victory going into November by acting like they're the good people. Hey, thank you, Clarke Cooper. As always.
Hey, where's President Obama on marriage equality?
Well, not with us.
Dick Cheney. He's behind Dick Cheney.
Not with us. Anyway, thank you, Clarke Cooper and Joe Solmonese.